Rasputin's death changed history, but records show the legend was built on lies in 1916. 3 men tried to kill him that night. They used poison, they used bullets, they used the freezing river. The story spread across Russia, it spread across the world. People said he could not die, they said he was superhuman, they said he was evil. But the truth was different. The autopsy report told another story. The witnesses changed their words, the doctors found something else. And the reason they wanted him dead was not about magic or madness. It was about power. Most people only know the myth, not the truth. If you want real history without noise, this is what Unraveled Archives is for. This is the real story of how one man's death became a legend, and how that legend hid what really happened. Grigory Rasputin was born in Siberia in 1869. He grew up in a small village called Pokrovskoye. His family were peasants. They farmed. They survived. There was nothing special about his childhood. But Rasputin left home when he was young. He wandered. He traveled to monasteries. He claimed to have visions. He claimed God spoke to him. People called him a stranik. That means a holy wanderer. In Russia, these men were respected. They lived without property. They prayed. They gave advice. By 1903, Rasputin had reached St. Petersburg. This was the capital of Russia. It was the center of power. The royal family lived there. The churches were there. The nobles were there. And Rasputin began to meet them. He did not look like other holy men in the city. He had long hair. He had a thick beard. His clothes were rough. He smelled of dirt and sweat. But people said he had a gift. They said he could heal. They said he could see into your soul. In 1905, Rasputin was introduced to Tsar Nicholas II and his wife Tsarina Alexandra. They ruled the Russian Empire. They had 4 daughters. They had 1 son. His name was Alexei. And Alexei was sick. He had hemophilia. His blood did not clot. A small cut could kill him. A bruise could kill him. Doctors could do nothing. The Tsarina was desperate. She prayed. She sought help everywhere. And then she met Rasputin. Rasputin claimed he could help the boy. And something strange happened. When Rasputin prayed over Alexei, the bleeding stopped. It happened more than once. Doctors could not explain it. The Tsarina believed it was a miracle. She believed Rasputin was sent by God. From that moment, Rasputin had power. He was not a doctor. He was not a noble. He was not educated. But the Tsarina trusted him, and the Tsar listened to his wife. This made people angry. The nobles hated Rasputin. They thought he was a fraud. They thought he was dangerous. They said he had too much influence. They said he was controlling the royal family. Rumors spread. People said Rasputin was sleeping with the Tsarina. People said he was drunk all the time. People said he was a devil. Some of this was true. Rasputin drank. He spent time with women. He did not follow the rules of the church. But the worst accusations were not true. There was no proof he controlled the Tsar. There was no proof of an affair, but the rumors did not need proof. They spread anyway. By 1914, Russia entered World War I. The country fought Germany. The war went badly. Soldiers died. Food ran low. People suffered. The Tsar left St. Petersburg to command the army. He left the Tsarina in charge of the government, and she listened to Rasputin. Rasputin told her who to appoint. He told her who to fire. He told her what policies to support. He did not understand politics. He did not understand war, but she believed in him. She believed God spoke through him. The nobles watched this happen. They saw the country falling apart. They saw the war being lost. They saw Rasputin whispering in the Tsarina's ear, and they decided he had to die. The common belief is simple. Rasputin was poisoned with cyanide. He did not die. He was shot. He did not die. He was thrown in a river. He drowned. But the legend hides something deeper. The men who killed him were not just angry, they were desperate. They believed killing Rasputin would save Russia. They believed it would save the monarchy. They believed it would change the course of the war. They were wrong. Letters between the conspirators still exist. Police reports still exist. The autopsy report still exists. And these documents tell a different story than the legend. They show what really happened that night. They show why the myth grew. And they show what Rasputin's death really meant. So who were the men who planned to kill him? The plot exposed the fear of Russia's elite. Yet letters show the killers were amateurs in December 1916. They were not soldiers. They were not assassins. They were nobles. They were young. They were afraid, and they built a plan that should never have worked. But it did. Prince Felix Yusupov was the richest man in Russia. His family owned palaces, they owned land, they owned art and jewels. Felix was young, only 29 years old. He was married to the Tsar's niece. He was educated. He had traveled across Europe. He was charming. But Felix hated Rasputin. He believed Rasputin was destroying Russia. He believed the rumors. He believed the Tsarina was under Rasputin's spell, and he decided to act. Felix was not alone. He brought in others. One was Grand Duke Dmitry Pavlovich. Dmitry was the Tsar's cousin. He was 25 years old. He was an officer in the Imperial Guard. He was handsome and popular. He was also afraid for Russia's future. There was also Vladimir Purishkevich. He was a politician. He was older than the others. He was loud. He gave speeches in the Duma, the Russian parliament. He blamed Rasputin for everything wrong in Russia. He wanted him gone. There were others involved too. A doctor named Stanislaw Lazarevert, an officer named Ivan Sukhotin. They were part of the group, but Felix was the leader. This was his plan. The plan was simple. Felix would invite Rasputin to his palace. He would say his wife was sick. Rasputin often helped people who were ill. Felix would offer him food and wine. The food and wine would be poisoned. Rasputin would die quietly. It would look like an accident or natural causes. They chose cyanide. Dr. Lazarevert brought the poison. He was supposed to know how to use it. He ground it into powder. He mixed it into cakes and wine. They prepared everything in the basement of Felix's palace. The palace was called the Moika Palace. It sat on a canal in St. Petersburg. The basement had been decorated like a dining room. There were carpets, there were chairs, there was a fireplace. Felix wanted it to feel safe and warm. He wanted Rasputin to relax. On the night of December 16th, 1916, Felix went to pick up Rasputin. He drove to Rasputin's apartment. It was late, near midnight. Rasputin got into the car. He wore a white silk shirt. He wore velvet pants. He wore tall boots. He had combed his hair. He looked like he was going to a party. Felix brought him to the basement. He offered him the cakes. He offered him the wine. Rasputin ate. He drank, and nothing happened. Felix watched him. Minutes passed. Rasputin kept talking. He kept eating. He kept drinking. He did not fall. He did not choke. He did not die. Felix began to panic. He left the room. He went upstairs. The other men were waiting there. Felix told them the poison was not working. They did not understand. Dr. Lazarevert said he used enough poison to kill several men, but Rasputin was fine. They waited. An hour passed. Rasputin was still alive. He asked for music. Felix played the guitar. Rasputin sang. He drank more wine. He smiled. Felix could not take it anymore. He went upstairs again. He borrowed a revolver from Grand Duke Dmitry. He went back downstairs. Rasputin was looking at a cabinet. Felix raised the gun. He aimed at Rasputin's chest. He fired. Rasputin screamed. He fell to the floor. He did not move. Felix thought it was over. He went back upstairs. He told the others Rasputin was dead. They came downstairs to see the body. They stood around him. They checked his pulse. There was nothing. But then Felix leaned closer. He shook Rasputin, and Rasputin's eyes opened. Rasputin grabbed Felix by the throat. He stood up. He pushed Felix away. He ran toward the stairs. He was bleeding. He was stumbling, but he was alive. Felix screamed for help. Purishkevich ran after Rasputin. Rasputin made it outside into the courtyard. He was crawling through the snow. Purishkevich fired his gun. He missed. He fired again. He hit Rasputin in the back. He fired again. He hit Rasputin in the head. Rasputin fell into the snow. He stopped moving. The men dragged his body back inside. They panicked. They had not planned for this. They thought he would die quietly. But now there was blood. There was noise. There were gunshots. People might have heard. They decided to get rid of the body. They wrapped Rasputin in a curtain. They tied it with rope. They drove to the Malaya Nevka River. The river was frozen. They found a hole in the ice. They pushed the body through. It sank into the black water. Then they went home. They tried to act normal. They thought it was over. But the story had just begun. The night shattered the conspirators' plan, however. Witnesses said Rasputin fought back before dawn. His body disappeared under the ice. The men thought they were safe, but the city was already asking questions. Most stories about Rasputin stop at the shooting and the river. They call it mysterious. They call it dark. If you want the evidence that historians found later, this is what unraveled archives are for. What happened next changed everything. Rasputin's daughter Maria woke up on December 17th. Her father had not come home. This was unusual. Rasputin often stayed out late, but he always came back. Maria felt something was wrong. She went to the police. She told them her father was missing. She said he went to visit Prince Felix Yusupov. The police began to ask questions. Felix lied. He said Rasputin never came to his house. He said he had not seen him. But people had seen Rasputin get into Felix's car. Neighbors heard gunshots near the Moika Palace. There was blood in the snow outside. The police searched the palace. They found bloodstains in the basement. They found a trail of blood in the courtyard. Felix changed his story. He said Rasputin was there. He said Rasputin left. He said he did not know what happened after that. The Tsar was told. The Tsarina was told. They ordered a full investigation. They ordered a search. And on December 19th, divers found Rasputin's body in the river. The body was frozen. It was wrapped in a curtain. It was tied with rope. They pulled it out of the water. They brought it to a morgue. Doctors performed an autopsy. This is where the legend begins to crack. The autopsy was conducted by Professor Dmitry Kosorotov. He was a respected forensic expert. He examined the body carefully. He wrote a detailed report, and his findings did not match the story Felix told later. Felix would later say that Rasputin survived the poison. He would say Rasputin survived multiple gunshots. He would say Rasputin was still alive when they threw him in the river. He would say Rasputin drowned. He would say Rasputin clawed at the ice trying to escape. But the autopsy showed something different. Professor Kosorotov found 3 bullet wounds, one in the chest, one in the back, one in the head. The head wound was fatal. It destroyed part of his brain. Rasputin would have died almost instantly from that wound. The professor checked the lungs. If Rasputin drowned, his lungs would be full of water. But they were not. There was no water in his lungs. There was no sign of drowning. Rasputin was already dead when he entered the river. What about the poison? The professor checked the stomach. He found food. He found wine. But he found no trace of cyanide. There was no sign of poisoning at all. This confused everyone. Felix said they used cyanide. Dr. Lazovert said he prepared the poison himself. So what happened? Historians now believe the poison was never real. Cyanide loses its strength over time. If it is exposed to heat or moisture, it becomes useless. Dr. Lazovert may have used old cyanide, or he may have prepared it incorrectly, or he may have been too afraid to actually poison someone. Some historians think Dr. Lazovert lied. Maybe he never put poison in the cakes. Maybe he could not bring himself to do it. Maybe he thought someone else would kill Rasputin first. Either way, Rasputin was not poisoned, he was shot, and he died from the gunshot to his head. So why did the legend grow? Felix Yusupov wrote a book years later. He was living in exile in France. He had lost everything. Russia had fallen to revolution. The Tsar was dead. Felix's wealth was gone. But he had a story, and he sold that story. In his book, Felix made Rasputin sound superhuman. He said the poison did not work. He said Rasputin survived bullet after bullet. He said Rasputin climbed out of the river ice before dying. Felix made himself sound like a hero fighting a monster. People wanted to believe it. Rasputin was already a legend in Russia. He was the mad monk. He was the devil. People believed he had powers. So when Felix said those powers made him hard to kill, it fit the myth. But it was not true. Rasputin was a man. He was strong. He fought back when Felix shot him. He tried to escape. That was brave. That was human. But he was not magical. The poison failed because it was never really there. The bullets worked. One of them killed him. The legend served a purpose. It made Rasputin larger than life. It made his death dramatic, and it hid the real reason he was killed. This was not about magic, it was about politics. The poison failed because it was never real, yet doctors confirmed the bullets killed him within hours. The conspirators were arrested, the Tsar was furious, the Tsarina was heartbroken, but the men were not punished the way murderers should be. Why? After Rasputin's body was found, the truth came out quickly. Felix admitted he shot Rasputin. Purishkevich admitted he shot him too. Grand Duke Dmitry admitted he helped. They did not try to hide it anymore. The Tsar was angry. These were men from his own family. These were men from the highest levels of society. They had murdered someone close to his wife. They had broken the law. They had created chaos. But the Tsar did not execute them. He did not put them in prison. He sent them away. Felix was exiled to his estate in central Russia. Dmitri was sent to the Persian front to serve in the army. Purishkevich was sent away as well. The others received light punishments or none at all. Why? Because many people in Russia supported the murder. Nobles supported it, politicians supported it. Even some members of the royal family supported it. They believed Rasputin was the problem. They believed his death would save Russia. Letters from that time show this. Grand Duchess Maria Pavlovna wrote that Felix was a hero. She said he did what had to be done. Other nobles agreed. They visited Felix before he left for exile. They thanked him. They gave him gifts. The Russian people had mixed feelings. Some thought Rasputin deserved to die. They believed the rumors. They believed he was corrupting the royal family. But others saw it differently. Peasants in Siberia saw Rasputin as one of them. They saw a simple man who rose to power. They saw him murdered by rich nobles. It felt like a betrayal. The Tsarina was destroyed. She had lost the one person she believed could save her son. She had lost the one person she believed spoke for God. She arranged for Rasputin to be buried in a private ceremony. She attended the burial herself. She cried over his grave. But the conspirators were wrong about one thing. Killing Rasputin did not save Russia. It did not save the monarchy. It did not change anything. 2 months later, revolution came. In March 1917, protests broke out in St. Petersburg. Workers went on strike. Soldiers refused to fight. The people demanded food. They demanded peace. They demanded change. The Tsar tried to stop it. He could not. On March 15, 1917, Tsar Nicholas II gave up the throne. He signed a document. He stepped down. The Russian Empire ended. Over 300 years of Romanov rule ended. The Tsar and his family were arrested. They were sent to Siberia. A year later, they were executed. Felix Yusupov escaped Russia. He fled to Paris. He lived there for the rest of his life. He wrote his book about killing Rasputin. He gave interviews. He became famous for that one night. He never expressed regret. Grand Duke Dmitri also escaped. He went to Western Europe. He lived a quiet life. He died in 1942. Purishkevich stayed in Russia longer. He fought against the Bolsheviks in the Civil War. He was captured. He died in 1920. Dr. Lazovat escaped too. He lived in France. He never spoke much about that night. Rasputin's body did not stay buried. When the revolution came, soldiers found his grave. They dug him up. They burned his body. They scattered the ashes. The Bolsheviks wanted to erase him. They wanted to erase everything about the old Russia, but they could not erase the legend. The story of Rasputin's death spread across the world. Newspapers wrote about it. Books were written. Movies were made. Each version made the story bigger. Each version made Rasputin stranger and darker. In some versions, Rasputin predicted his own death. In some versions, he cursed the royal family before he died. In some versions, he was a wizard or a demon. None of this was real, but the legend did not care about truth. Historians spent decades trying to separate fact from fiction. They found the autopsy report. They found letters from the conspirators. They found police records. They interviewed people who were there. Slowly, the real story emerged. Rasputin was not poisoned. He was shot 3 times. The final shot killed him. He did not drown. He was dead before he hit the water. He was not superhuman. He was a man who got caught in a political war he could not win. The conspirators were not heroes. They were desperate men who thought one murder could fix a broken system. They were wrong. Russia was falling apart long before Rasputin arrived. The war was lost. The people were starving. The government was weak. Killing Rasputin changed nothing. But the story mattered. It became a symbol. It became a warning. It showed how fear and rumor can destroy a person. It showed how myths can replace truth. And it showed how people will believe anything if it fits the story they want to hear. The fall of Rasputin revealed the collapse of Russia. Instead, history shows the murder meant nothing before the war ended. The conspirators thought they saved the country. They did not. The revolution came anyway, the Tsar fell anyway, and Rasputin became the legend they created. What does that mean? Rasputin's real power was never magic. It was accessible. He had the ear of the Tsarina. That was enough. In a country ruled by one family, access to that family meant everything. The nobles feared him because he was not one of them. He did not follow their rules. He did not respect their traditions. He came from nothing, and he stood closer to the throne than they did. That terrified them. They could have removed him politically. They could have convinced the Tsar to send him away. They could have exposed the truth about his influence, but they did not trust the system. They did not believe the Tsar would listen, so they chose murder. And murder made everything worse. It made Rasputin a martyr to some. It made him a monster to others. It split the country even more. It showed that even the highest nobles were willing to break the law. It showed that Russia had no stability left. Modern historians see Rasputin differently now. They see a man who was used by everyone around him. The Tsarina used him to feel hope for her son. The nobles used him as a scapegoat for Russia's failures. The conspirators used him to feel like heroes, and history used him as a symbol of everything wrong with the old Russia. But Rasputin himself was just a man. He believed he had a gift. Maybe he did. Maybe the comfort he gave Alexei somehow helped the boy's condition. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe it was faith. Doctors still do not fully understand haemophilia or the role stress plays in bleeding episodes. Rasputin's calming presence may have helped. Or it may have been luck. Either way, he was not a villain. He was not a saint. He was a peasant who got too close to power, and power destroyed him. The way he died mattered less than why he died. He died because people needed someone to blame. Russia was losing a war. People were starving. The government was failing. It was easier to blame one man than to face the truth. The truth was that the system itself was broken. Killing Rasputin didn't fix that. It never could. The legend of his death grew because people needed it to mean something. If Rasputin was superhuman, then killing him was heroic. If he was evil, then his death was justice. If he was strange and powerful, then his story was worth remembering. But the real story is simpler and sadder. A group of young men made a terrible decision. They killed someone they feared. They thought it would save their world. It did not. Their world ended anyway. Rasputin's death did not cause the Russian Revolution, but it was a sign. It was a symptom. It showed that the old order was already dead. The nobles no longer believed in the Tsar. The Tsar no longer controlled his own family. The system was collapsing. Rasputin's murder was just one more crack in the foundation. When the revolution came, no one remembered the conspirators as heroes. Felix lost everything. Dmitri lost everything. Russia did not thank them. History did not thank them. They were footnotes, but Rasputin became a legend. That is the strange power of myth. The truth fades, the story grows, and 100 years later, people still talk about the man who would not die. Even though he did, even though he was just a man, even though the poison never existed and the drowning never happened.